Soon I'm going to introduce to you the speaker for today's event. Last week, we heard a lot of spurious allegations, manipulated facts, distorted narrative from the NDC, targeted at the Attorney General. The Attorney General's credibility remains unblemished. He is one of the most hard-working Attorney Generals we've had in this republic. Very intelligent, very smart, and no amount of shenanigans, no amount of evil intention against him will suffice. Now, we have here today the NDC addressed the press where what is believed to be their evidence, the much talked about tape, was released today. Clearly, you could see that it was doctored. It is a manipulated tape. It is a cut and pieced together tape, thrown out to create a certain impression, and we are here to respond to these evil-minded persons. Ladies and gentlemen, friends from the media, lawyer Frank Davis to address us.
Good afternoon. I believe it's not getting to evening. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the media, and to borrow the language of His Excellency the President, fellow Ghanaians. I must apologize on behalf of our great party for keeping you waiting. We scheduled the press conference to be for 16 hours precisely. But of course, we had to work on our script and make sure that we crossed our T's and dotted our I's. So thankfully, you have had the patience to wait for us, and we appreciate it. Thank you very much for your tolerance. This is a press conference to address Ghanaians on the desperate act that the main opposition party, NDC, is involved in to shield Atuforse, an accused person standing trial in our courts, from accountability. It is not in dispute that the justice delivery system is arguably the last bastion of a burgeoning constitutional democracy. And if it is constantly being bastardized by people who ought, in the very least, be responsible and know better, it leaves very much to be desired. We owe it to ourselves and posterity to rescue our dear country from this dark canker by those who have made it their stock in trade to spew vitriol and unapologetically take shots at a system they have little or no faith in at all. We have called you here because the NDC have since last week set in motion a malicious scheme fueled by lies, falsehoods, misrepresentations, blackmail, and needless pollution of the mass media, with the sole intention of obstructing the course of justice and scandalizing the criminal proceedings in the High Court, all in the bid to shield Atuforse MP, minority leader in Parliament, and former Deputy Minister of Finance, and his associates from taking responsibility for authorizing some payments which resulted in a whopping sum of 3.27 million euros lost by the state, monies that belong to us all as Ghanaians. Ladies and gentlemen, you ask, how did we get here? On 22nd December 2011, Cabinet endorsed an executive approval of a joint memorandum submitted to Cabinet by the then Minister for Health and first accused person, Kesela Tuforsen, then Deputy Minister for Finance, for the purchase of 200 ambulances out of a medium-term credit facility of 15,800,000 euros between Standard Bank Ghana Limited and the Government of Ghana through the Ministry of Finance. On 1st December 2012, the Parliament of Ghana granted approval for the financing agreement between Standard Bank Ghana Limited and the Government of Ghana for the purchase of the 200 ambulances. By an agreement dated 19 December 2012, the Government of Ghana contracted a company in Dubai known as Big C General Trading LLC. In the course, we just refer to them as Big C, whose local agent is the third accused person, Richard Jakpa. And the company was to supply the 200 ambulances to the government, even though that company was unknown to the Cabinet and parliamentary approvals regarding the transaction. By the terms of the agreement, advance payment for the contract was prohibited. Payment for the vehicles was stated in the agreement to be through letters of credit established for 25% of the contract price upon the delivery of every 50 ambulance vehicles. On 7th August 2014, in blatant disregard of the financing arrangement for the transaction approved by both Cabinet and the Parliament of Ghana, first accused, Kesela Tuforsen, authorized the Bank of Ghana to urgently establish the letters of credit for the supply of 15 ambulances amounting to 3,950,000 euros, representing 25% of the contract sum. At this time, it is instructive to state that not a single ambulance had been delivered. On 12 August 2014, first accused also directed the Controller and Accountant General to pay the sums of 806,688 Ghana cedis 75 pesos, representing bank charges covering the establishment of letters of credit for the supply of 50 ambulances, and further directed for the amount to be charged against the capital expenditure vote for the Ministry of Health. Ladies and gentlemen, all these directives by first accused, Kesela Tuforsen, were contrary to the agreement for the supply of the ambulances, as well as the parliamentary approval regarding the financing of the transaction. It is also important to note that Tuforsen's authorization of payments for the transaction was without any request from the Ministry of Health. In fact, the Ministry of Health had specifically asked Big C to stop producing the ambulances as there was no valid contract regarding the transaction. In spite of all that, Tuforsen, without cause and for reasons best known to himself, proceeded to authorize payment for the ambulances. Pursuant to the unlawful directives of first accused, Tuforsen, Big C shipped 30 vehicles in 3 consignments between October 2014 and February 2015, which were fundamentally defective and lacking in the basic requirements for an ambulance. In short, they were not fit for purpose. This was confirmed by a letter written by the then Minister for Health, Dr. Alessegbefia, and other assessments by the National Ambulance Service. In point of fact, Alessegbefia, in the letter to Big C, described the ambulances as ordinary vans, to wit, trotro. Interestingly, this same himself, Alessegbefia, was sitting with them in the press conference. These vehicles were never used and could not be used as ambulances during the whole tenure of the John Mahama administration. Following the change in government in 2017, investigations commenced and statements were taken from several people, including the incumbent Speaker of Parliament, Kingsford Bagbin, Mr. Kweku Ajiman Mensah, Madam Sherry Aite Disease, and Dr. Alessegbefia, all of whom were former health ministers, as well as first accused Kesela Tuforsen and other persons, including the third accused person, Richard Jakpa. Out of these many people, the Attorney General, convinced that the willful act of Kesela Tuforsen had resulted in a financial loss of €2,370,000 to the state, charged him before the High Court, together with Sylvester Animana, the former Chief Director of the Ministry of Health, and Richard Jakpa, a businessman, for causing financial loss, abetment to causing financial loss, and misapplying public property. The proceedings before the High Court. Ladies and gentlemen, proceedings in this matter have run its full course since commencement in December 2021. The prosecution, led by the able Attorney General, called 5 witnesses in proof of its case. Lawyers for first accused, in an attempt to truncate the proceedings, filed a submission of no case and urged the court to rule that Kesela Tuforsen had no case to answer, as no prima facie case had been made against him. This plea was outrightly rejected by the court, presided over by Justice Ifia Sewa Asaribotre, a justice of the Court of Appeal, sitting as an additional High Court judge. The court ruled, among others, that the Attorney General had led sufficient evidence to establish a case against Atuforsen, and therefore ordered him to open his defense. Atuforsen subsequently opened his defense and also closed his case. The third accused, Richard Jakpa, also opened his case and was last Thursday being cross-examined when he made a scandalous, malicious, baseless, and spurious allegation that the Attorney General had approached him on several occasions to skew his testimony to implicate Atuforsen. Ladies and gentlemen, why would any credible person do such a thing? Indeed, if the Attorney General had any intention of having him skew the evidence in favor of Atuforsen, it would not just be just for the Attorney General to continue the prosecution of Atuforsen. But that is what the NDC wants us to believe. Ladies and gentlemen, it is no secret that the NDC ever since the commencement of Atuforsen's prosecution has threatened rain and storm against government, the Attorney General, and any person they can find to cajole the Attorney General from discontinuing the prosecution. Pressure has come from every angle, including former President Mahama, the leadership of the minority in Parliament, the clergy, business friends of Atuforsen, etc., etc. Indeed, former President Mahama specifically maintained the discontinuance of the ambulance trial as a condition to get members of the minority in Parliament to agree to the recent recall in Parliament, and has on several other occasions stated it as a condition precedent for the cooperation of the minority in Parliament. This pressure stems from some warped and baseless logic of the NDC that the Atuforsen's prosecution is politically motivated, and its leader in Parliament should be immune from prosecution, even when the facts indicate conduct resulting in financial loss to the state. As mentioned earlier, investigations commenced as far back as 2017, making it imperative to ask at this stage, why is Atuforsen, the only government official, being prosecuted from all other former ministers from whom statements were taken? Your guess should equally be good as mine. Clearly, the prosecution is based on the various documentation available from the participating agencies in the transaction, and this is evidenced by the court's ruling upholding that the case has been made by the Attorney General that warrants an answer from the defense. It is also worth noting that the prosecution of Kesela Atuforsen commenced even before he became minority leader, making it worthless and nonsensical, the suggestion that he is being prosecuted because he's a minority leader in Parliament. This logic can only come from the NDC. Ladies and gentlemen, if at all, the only prosecution in this instance is the malicious and perennial dislike of the NDC towards the Attorney General since he assumed office, and the several attempts made by the NDC to stultify his work. The records are there clearly to show that right from his appointment as Attorney General, the NDC has spent one of the longest periods in our constitutional vetting system with the hope of impeaching his appointment, but the Attorney General remained resolute to their administration. You all watched the live telecast of his vetting in Parliament, and you saw what the NDC took him through. He survived the storm, and is still our competent Attorney General. Having failed in all these endeavors, the NDC filed a motion for censure to remove Godfrey Dame from office as Attorney General soon after his appointment, but this also failed. The NDC have since his appointment held over 12 press conferences against the person of the Attorney General. What at all do the NDC want from this young man? The youngest Attorney General the country has ever produced is working in the best interest of the nation. Yet, these people will not let him rest. The latest allegation by Richard Jakpa, the third accused and an associate of Kesela 247 in this botched ambulance procurement transaction, is therefore only a further ploy contrived to curtail the prosecution of a 247 and smear the Attorney General's integrity and reputation. But this, I can assure you, will not work. We firmly believe that public officials, regardless of social standing, must be treated equally before the law, and they should be accountable for their use of public resources. Needless to say that the law is no respecter of persons. Ladies and gentlemen, the allegations by Richard Jakpa that the AG has on several occasions met him in private at odd hours and in person on phone to coax him to implicate the accused person is a complete variance with the prevailing facts. In fact, it is laughable. The attempt to selectively present facts without the whole is telling of the intentions of the third accused person. For the record, it is unacceptable that Johnson Asiedu Nketia will run a commentary over the alleged tape calculated to prevent Ghanaians and discerning people as such from making their own deductions and reasoned judgment. You saw him on radio behaving like a choir master. Again, even though from the screenshots displayed, the alleged conversation is supposed to last 26 minutes, the NDC schemed to play only 60 minutes. 16 out of 26. The question is, where is the rest of the tape? Even in respect of what was played, it is apparent that there are repetitions, overlaps, incoherence, voiceover, and distortions, demonstrating that the NDC has spent these past days distorting whatever tape they played. It is no wonder that even this afternoon, we are caught in the same trap anyway. Even this afternoon, instead of commencing the press conference at 2, they had to wait till about 3 o'clock because they were still doctoring. We haven't doctored. We are presenting to you the facts as they are. Even on that doctored tape, the Attorney General never requested the witness to falsify, fabricate, or concoct any evidence or testify in the prosecution's favor. You all heard the tape. Where did the Attorney General lure the third accused person to prefer evidence against the first accused? With the load of evidence before the court, how can the Attorney General manipulate the third accused person? Indeed, if the prosecution had not made any case against Atuforse, the judge will not call upon them to open their defense. Let us throw those accusations in the dustbin of worthless material. Again, on the question of who initiated the meeting, even from the NDC's presentation, it is clear that if any meeting at all was called, it was mooted and initiated at the instance of the third accused person. We would like to put it on record that as of February 2022, when Jakpa requested for a meeting with the AG never met him and never made any arrangement to the Supreme Court Justice, Emmanuel Yoni. It was not until the AG was invited to the residence of His Lordship Justice Emmanuel Yoni in 2023 that he surprisingly met Richard Jakpa at his residence. We remain resolute and very firm in our minds that the Attorney General has never approached the accused person for any conversation, let alone request him to skew his testimony against first accused Kesela Tuforse. The only meeting at which the Attorney General met the third accused person was in the residence of a Supreme Court judge, His Lordship Justice Emmanuel Yoni, who about 6 weeks ago requested to see the Attorney General. It is not out of place for the Attorney General to visit the said justice upon request, most when the two were friends, even before the elevation of the latter to the Supreme Court. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, we are all lawyers, we are all trained lawyers. Standing here as a lawyer, if even a magistrate, a circuit court judge, should call me as a trained lawyer to visit him in the house to have a discussion, I will not, for any reason, say that I will not attend. But that meeting should not lead me to abuse my professional oath and pervert justice. Lawyers and judges drink from the same bowl. The judges are lawyers before they became judges. So if a judge invites me to his house, what is offensive? And this is what the NDC wants to make capital out of. They have lawyers in their midst. Would they tell me that their lawyers never visit judges? Again, the Attorney General, at the time of the invitation, was unaware that the third accused person was going to be present, and therefore his subsequent appearance in the House of the Justice was surprising. It is pertinent to note that prior to this meeting, the Attorney General had closed his case, and the court had thrown out the application of Atuforsen for a submission of no case as being without merit. The third accused had also, by 4 different letters by his lawyers, requested and made proposals to the Attorney General for a plea bargain, which will see Big C, third accused principal, paid 2 million euros in exchange for the cessation of prosecution. This has been roundly rejected by the Attorney General. In fact, third accused, through his lawyers in the letter dated 16 May 2023, had indicated unequivocally that they were requesting a plea bargain, and following the rejection, I requested the AG for terms which the Attorney General will consider acceptable. The Supreme Court judge, Justice Emmanuel Yoni, therefore sought to inquire whether there was room for a plea bargain, and the AG highlighted that he was not opposed, provided it was made in proper form, and assured third accused that he had nothing personally against any of the accused persons. The Attorney General further requested that since the charges principally focus on the public officials through whose actions the laws was occasioned, Richard Jakpa should show fidelity to the transaction records which were already in evidence. Finally, there is also a record that first accused himself, Kesela Tuforse, had, in the company of a senior parliamentarian, visited the AG in his house to plead with him to end the prosecution. The NDC, in their press conference today, have conveniently failed, refused or neglected to respond to this fact, which was also contained in the response of the Ministry of Justice following the proceedings of Thursday. Why will Atuforse go to the Attorney General to beg for a discontinuance of his prosecution, and the same person will, through another medium, say that the Attorney General is persecuting him? You can make the inference yourself. You are the best judges. Ladies and gentlemen, if the Attorney General desired to cajole the third accused as suggested, then the best avenue will have been following the third accused person's request for the AG to propose terms acceptable to him, and the several WhatsApp messages sent to the AG pleading with him. Clearly, the third accused person is a hired mercenary contracted to exploit his relationship with the Supreme Court judge, knowing the AG's inability to disrespect the said justice when invited after failing to secure a meeting with the AG. All this is against the backdrop that since the Attorney General was appointed into office, he has been arguably one of the most successful, both in and out of court. As remarkably noted by the President at the last State of the Nation's address, he has successfully saved the state over 10 trillion Ghanaian cedis, and his verve in protecting public resources is shown by his commitment to the prosecution of public officials whose acts have resulted in huge financial loss to the state. This is beside the other several infrastructure and logistical improvements to the Office of the Attorney General and Ministry of Justice, including the almost completed Law House. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, it is the firm belief of the NDC and Atuforsen, if it is the firm belief of the NDC and Atuforsen that no laws had occasioned the state from its conduct, then they should just remain faithful to our judicial system and seize these malicious orchestrations targeted at bastardizing our judicial system and to prevent him from standing trial to its final conclusion. They should just keep quiet and let the proceedings in court continue. We are very clear in our minds that the cause for the resignation of the Attorney General is misplaced, unwarranted, and this will not put any spokes in the prosecution of KSL Atuforsen and his associates. Ladies and gentlemen, the call for the resignation of the Attorney General coming from the NDC is very, very rich. The NDC calling on the Attorney General to resign from office. That is rich Ghanaians. The AG will not resign. He will continue to remain witty, resolute, and focused in the delivery of his work, as he does always. The wheels of justice, we say, grind slowly, but eventually it will grind to a halt. Thank you once again for coming to listen to us on such short notice. God bless our homeland, Ghana, and make her great and strong. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lawyer Frank Davis. Abusunafo Madarama. Asama ya ken ya asamwa ehunhia Ghana fo yi pa. NDC fo adendada atro kontompo epese omudi mfuturo gu Ghana fo ani. Sane be ya omu pani a wo parliament a yabo no kwadu so wama Ghana aboka wama Ghana ahwiri sika ode ne pe na namra kwan so mo tetia e Ghana mra so no omu pese omu di dede atro nkontompo eto no so abusuafo asem ne say kona koto ambulance bra ambulance ahenu 200 ambulance asema ye kan eye Mahama cabinet approve ye loan na o se akoji free Stanbic Bank so eno so parliament approve money adwumako bi e wo Dubai hyehye ho se emfa ambulance imra enhyehye ya na e wo ho ne se ansa na ambulance ni beba no ye ntuaka ambulance ni bedru ye hwe se fata ansa na etuaka ye ratu force ye nim nyena ono pewo saa enhyehye mu ye nim nyena owom ne etuamu ne obenya firim ye nim se na bibi ko ne kotoko mu a ode ahopepre etro krata e de koma Bank of Ghana se Bank of Ghana enkotua nkofo ya omfa ambulance maaye enkotua omuka ampa Bank of Ghana so ekotua omuka etua omuka wie nya no nko a o Now was our truck car as a controller. Say controller entire a year bank charges sika bank a did you as no and send to over 900,000 Ghana cedis. And so how answer na crampo no actually Tanako Bank of Ghana no na sabre no Mami a nyamemfa ne currency ye no ye minister in charge of health. Near friend of Madam Shirley Aite. Now what truck car tadi akwa a year Big C campaign for your modu buy also the ambulance buy the ambulance in Tuntura buy no. What truck come say more for ambulance name. In fact, they should not even produce more produce ambulance no. Ne momo no. Omo twen sanse Ministry of Health kwanya nya sika. Ena contract so gusua enam parliament mu. Ye hu ne yekoye yakwakotu ankofu ika ankofu yin so mfa ambulance mu aya. Ovan ya ye de koso humu nsanwo mu ibi no mo de aba. Ambulance trontra na anu a NPP aban ye de ambulance by obi ehun ye. Ah e call every constituency obi ehun ye.